Hello, Dr. Miaken Zeigler here of Zeigler Chiropractic, and welcome to the conversation on nutrition essentials. When we look at vital needs and what our body needs, nutrition is right up there. And I love this conversation because we're really looking at diving into understanding, number one, what are people eating? How is it impacting our health? So that's where we're going to start with this conversation today, is looking at the current stats as it relates to the health of Americans. And then we're going to look into choosing and how to set yourself up for success to get the best quality nutrition. And because, and we'll dive into some of the stats here, but because nutritionally, sometimes our foods aren't providing us with the minerals and the vitamins and the needs to provide sufficient, nutrition. That's where supplementation comes in handy. So we're going to cover what I consider some essential nutrition through the lens of supplementation. So welcome. I am so glad you're here, and let's get started. I love this fact because this is from 1936. It's found in a Senate document back in March of 1936, and they said back then 99% of American people are deficient in minerals, and a marked deficiency in any one of the more important minerals actually results in disease. Okay, this is what they knew back then. They went on to say, do you know that most of us today are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies which cannot be remedied until the depleted soils from which our foods come are brought into proper mineral balance? Okay. The alarming fact is that foods, our fruits, our vegetables, our grains are raised on millions of acres of land that no longer contain enough of the certain needed minerals. We're starving no matter how much we eat. I find this fascinating because we've come a long way in many ways in 85 years, and yet we're still dealing with the same problem. And my question to you is, do you think this is better, or do you think it's worse now? Understanding that there was deficiency in our soils, have our soils and farming practices changed? Or are we actually, continuing some of those farming and agricultural practices today and still dealing with much more depleted soils? So this is where I find it is valuable and so important that we supplement our diet with the appropriate nutritional supplementation to make up for what our food isn't providing for us. So let's look at some stats here. Americans are overfed and undernourished, okay? And most Americans are eating foods that are calorie rich, nutrient poor, they're fatty, they're starchy, sweetened, they're packaged, they're over processed, they're artificially preserved. When we look at the nutrient content, they are junk food. That is what we are eating. And when we look at, folks who are overweight or obese, which is a big problem in our country, most are, when you looked at the cellular level, most are undernourished. And you look at it, it's really a vicious cycle. When you have cellular starvation, your body is craving nutrition, minerals, vitamins, some nutrient-dense foods. And so if what we know to eat is calorie-rich but nutrient-poor, is sweetened, is over-processed, right? It's not providing us with the nutrition we need. We're going to continue to eat, continue to eat, continue to eat. It creates this vicious cycle, and we see weight gain. And then we see, these fad diets lose 10 pounds in, 10 days. And, what's the next best diet? How much can you lose in less time? We are a culture of instant gratification. And, if you are carrying more weight, that didn't happen overnight, right? You didn't just wake up this morning and say, wow, I'm 20 pounds heavier today than I was yesterday. No, it probably happened over years. And so when you're talking about really addressing something like overweight or obesity, it's going to require some lifestyle changes and to lose that weight is going to need to be done in a very specific, conscious way that you do and support your body in a healthy way. So let's get into some stats here. Before we do, I'm going to share my screen. I want to show you this article that I came across. The impact of chronic disease in the United States. Okay? And as we're looking at this, let's see if I was hoping I could make it bigger. But as we're looking at this, in the United States, chronic disease accounted for 88% of all deaths in 2002. Okay, we've got this pie chart that breaks down common causes of death: cardiovascular disease making up 30%, cancer 23%, chronic respiratory disease 8%, right? We've got this pie chart, and 88% of chronic diseases accounted for, or 88% of deaths were accounted towards chronic disease, right? Big deal, big problem. Now, when we go on further, this is what I found: projected prevalence of overweight in the US for males and females. And, if we look at, here's men in 2005, men in 2015, it said 79% projected to be overweight. To 2015, 87%, women, 77% back in 05, 83% in 2015. So we're continuing to see an increase of, men and women who are overweight as we continue through life. And I love the solutions that were provided by the World Health Organization. Cost-effective interventions exist, okay? But at least 80% of premature heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and 40% of cancers could be prevented through healthy diet, regular physical activity, and avoidance of tobacco products. That's a pretty substantial number. 80% could be completely prevented, completely banished, right? If we start to choose different lifestyle choices as it relates to how we move and how we eat, and just by avoiding tobacco products. That's a big deal. We could cut that number and cut, the amount of losses we experience to chronic disease by a substantial number. So we're talking about nutrition and getting the appropriate nutrition. Understand that this is a really vital conversation that could mean longevity and vitality and add years to your life, right? And not only years to your life, but life to your years, right? We're not talking about just, let's add in an extra 5 years. What's the quality of those years look like? So, when I look at some of these stats, that was one of the most updated stats I was able to find, because I found it fascinating. If we jump back down into looking at this number right here, the World Health Organization estimates 3/4 of Americans will be overweight or obese by 2020. I was able to find that WHO or WHO, stat that said 2015 you were already at 80%, right? So we've got some major health problems in our country. Obesity-related conditions, heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, certain types of cancer. So again, it really corresponds to that WHO document that I just shared with you. And how much does it cost? It costs a lot of money to be addressing chronic disease, but especially when we're talking specifically about obesity, $147 billion. And we know that the obesity-related conditions really is this umbrella of chronic disease. So, it's costing us a lot of money, and it's costing a lot of life. But if we break that up, right, those obesity-related diseases, we have heart disease, we have stroke, we have diabetes, okay? Heart disease, it's nicknamed the silent killer. Why? Because majority of heart disease recipients don't know they have it until they have a heart attack, and it kills most people. So it's the silent killer because oftentimes we don't even know we have heart disease, and our first symptom is a heart attack. Now that's a problem if you're the average American and you're focused on how you feel as a way to gauge your health. There's so many other factors that contribute to, are you healthy and are you well, besides how you're feeling. And that's what we're working towards in our practice, is to give you a different definition of health, right? Movement, energy, sleep, function. That's such a better indicator of health as opposed to just how you're feeling. So heart disease, it's a leading cause of death in both men and women, and it affects most racial and ethnic groups in the US. Somebody dies of a heart attack every 40 seconds. That's 1 in 4 deaths attributed to heart disease. And it cost the US $219 billion. And this was in 2014, 2015, right? It's a lot of money. Stroke, again, someone has a stroke every 40 seconds. So every 40 seconds, we have somebody who's dying of a heart attack, or excuse me, who has a heart attack. They don't necessarily die, but who has a heart attack. And every 40 seconds, we have somebody who's having a stroke. Stroke is the 5th leading cause of death. Diabetes, according to the American Diabetes Association, just under 10% of Americans have diabetes, 7th leading cause of death. And let's go back to key risk factors: high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, overweight, obese, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, and excessive alcohol use. When you look at these pieces, again, these are lifestyle choices, things that we can change every day in what we choose to do. And so that's why I do these workshops, because you know all this stuff. But when you hear it consistently over and over and over, when you're reminded of it, you start making different decisions. And that's why it is so vital for you to continue seeking out and better educating yourself so that you can grow and, just become a more evolved, educated, informed consumer, right? I want so much more for you than what the average person is experiencing. This is also fascinating. This is an old survey, done by the USDA in 1997, right? We're 24 years later, and my question to you is, do you think we're spending our money more intelligently? So how Americans spend their food dollars. These are the top 10. So we got cigarettes starting us and rounding us out, right, at 1 in 10. We've got Coca-Cola, macaroni and cheese, Pepsi, Diet Coke, and Budweiser. I mean, of the first 6, we have 1 food item. The other is cigarettes and alcohol or pop, right? Then we've got Campbell's soup, Tide detergent, Folgers coffee, and again, cigarettes. So of this top 10 list, what are people buying back in 1997? Macaroni and cheese and Campbell's soup, right? And let's go back to that second slide I showed you. That even if you're eating fruits and vegetables, right, those are deficient. So you can be doing the best things you can do to provide good nutrition to your body, right? Eating your fruits and vegetables on a daily basis and really having a nice, well-rounded, plate, and yet you're still deficient. And we look at what the average person is spending back in 1997, and they're getting macaroni and cheese and Campbell's soup. What's the quality of that food? So my question to you is, are people spending their money differently, right? Maybe there's not as many cigarette smokers. Maybe there are, I don't know. But what does the quality of the food look like now? So again, I think great for you to just reflect on how you're spending your money food-wise. So I think the first thing you can do is just simplify your food choices. Back in 1999, the composition of dozens of food were compared with records in 1950. And they found that protein, calcium, potassium, iron, vitamin C, vitamin B12 were all lacking across the board. And again, going back to that second slide, we've not improved our soil quality or farming practice standards since then. In fact, now we've got genetically modified, organisms, crops, GMOs that are being utilized, in our, standard farming practices and agricultural practices. right? Does our body recognize GMOs? Because it's not natural. So how is that impacting our health? So when you simplify your food choices by just eating real food, there's a gentleman who wrote a book, JERF, Just Eat Real Food. If you just eat real food, you're probably going to be making better health choices, and you're probably going to be better nourishing your body. So if you can cut out the processed foods that come from a box, or choose foods without labels. A lot of times when you grocery shop, a nutritionist will say, stay on the outside, of the store. Because when you get in those, those aisles, that's where you get into those processed foods and those foods that have lots of stuff in them. And I want to share this with you because I find it to be interesting. I'm going to go back to this screen. This came from the documentary Food Matters. And they said the top 10 food additives to avoid. I will be happy to share this with you if you would like it. But these are what are in your processed foods. Aspartame, we've all heard of it. It's used instead of sugar. Oftentimes it is used when you see the label diet or sugar-free. But if we look at this over here, aspartame is a neurotoxin, meaning it is toxic to our brain and nervous system. And it also is carcinogenic, which means it is cancer causing, right? So if you drink a lot of diet sodas or you eat a lot of sugar-free foods, right? They even say it could be in chewable vitamins, could be in toothpaste, cough syrup. It is correlating to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety attacks, dizziness, headaches, nausea, mental confusion, and seizures if you're consuming aspartame. We've got high fructose corn syrup found in most processed foods, breads, candies, yogurts, salad dressings, canned vegetables, cereals. Again, highly refined. And we read about this. It can add on the pounds faster than any other ingredient. Increases your LDL, so the bad cholesterol levels within your blood labs, right? So I'm not going to go through all of these, but understand when you are shopping in the center of the store and choosing processed foods, choosing foods that are in a box, they've got additives in there. MSGs or monosodium glutamate, trans fat, food dyes. We've got the sodium sulfite, nitrate, got this BHA and BHT, sulfur dioxide, potassium bromate. I mean, do those sound like foods you should be consuming? No. We know what an apple is, but do we know what E102 is or E133? No. So when you choose less of those processed foods, the better off you're going to be. Like I said, I'm happy to share this with you. I like it because it says it's known as, so when you look at the ingredient list, if you see the additive here or you see any of these, you can say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to choose this. So just food for thought as you are grocery shopping and preparing your meals. So eat real foods. And when you look at the macronutrients are the major nutrition. So the proteins, the fats, and the carbohydrates. None are bad, none are good. They're different and your body needs all of them, right? So proteins, best when it comes from an animal source. There may be some vegans or vegetarians, and there are different foods that you can consume to make sure you're getting the appropriate protein. I'm not going to dive into that today. Fats are hugely important. It was made out to be the bad guy. Back in the 70s when they made the food pyramid, we're actually finding that, every cell in our body has a fat or lipid cell membrane that is vital for the health of the cell. So if we make fat the bad guy, it can impact the health of our body at the cellular level. So again, it's when it comes from a natural source, butter, lard, nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut oil. When you get into those bad fats that are processed, canola, soybean, peanut oils, that can really cause some stress to the body. And stress to the body, when we're talking about nutrition, is weight gain, is lethargy and fatigue, is having a belly, right? So again, got to just keep that in mind when we're talking about food choices. Is when it comes to food, we're talking about you carrying more weight. You talking about, or I'm talking about maybe having a belly, or how you're able to move. The other thing is choosing organic foods. They're going to have, farmers who farm and grow organic food are held to a higher standard. They're not able to use the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides that traditional agriculture is using. Yes, bugs can eat it. If bugs are eating it and it's not exploding their stomach or killing them, it's probably going to be pretty dang good for our bodies. So if you just want to search Clean 15 or Dirty Dozen, you can find a quick list, but the Clean 15 are the foods grown in traditional or conventional agriculture that have hard outer shell that typically won't absorb the pesticides as much as, say, a Dirty Dozen that is a softer food like a strawberry or an apple. So just search Clean 15 Dirty Dozen. If you want to save and really budget when you're grocery shopping, you're going to want to follow the Clean 15 and purchase those conventionally grown fruits and vegetables, Dirty Dozen, and say always choose organic. When you cook at home, you can choose your own meals, or you can choose your own foods. You know where it's sourced from. You know what oils you're using or fats you're using to cook and saute vegetables in. So when you cook at home, you're always having a better understanding of what foods you're putting into your body. And I think the best way to make sure you're consuming, foods that are healthy for you is just to spend some time doing some meal planning. On a Sunday night, what are the foods you and your family want to consume? And if you map out, those food preparations and do your grocery shopping, when it comes to a Monday night or a Tuesday night when, oh my goodness, I'm so tired, exhausted, let's just order a pizza or let's swing by, McDonald's drive-through, you've already attacked that distraction. Said, oh, I've already prepped. I know what we're making. It's going to be quick and easy. So there are some great meal planner templates. You can just Google free meal planner template, and there's some fun ones. And I don't know, when things are fun to write on, makes the process more fun. So, okay. We're going to fly through these next couple slides because I want to get into some supplementation. But understand that our food travels a long way to get to us. We have, Colorado, we do have some great farmers around, great agricultural sources, but there are some states who don't. And so sometimes our food can travel thousands of miles before getting to us. And so in order to preserve that food from breaking down and creating, longer shelf life, our food is irradiated, it'll break down any potential harmful bacteria and provide a longer shelf life. So if you can choose seasonal, if you can choose local foods when possible, that's going to be your best bet. There are some great farmers markets. There are great community supported agricultures or CSAs. My husband and I are a part of one. They do winter shares, they do summer shares, but that's where you partner with a local farmer and you get food directly from them. So that's great to look into. Avoid genetically engineered or genetically modified foods. There are the main guys, so to speak, of GMO foods. That's canola oil, corn, cottonseed oil, dairy products, papaya, potatoes, squash, tomatoes. Those are grown with GMO seed. So if you can avoid those or make sure you're choosing organic when you want to purchase those, you're going to save your body, some stress. And then, I always like to think of when you're trying to make healthier food choices, just do a food swap. Think of doing this instead of this. If you always have if you're trying to reduce your smoking habit, right? We're talking food, but let's use tobacco as an example, because if we take that out of it, it reduces our chances for obesity and chronic disease. if we're trying to do this instead of this, so if we always go for a smoke break at 2 p.m., maybe it's just the action that we're used to. So instead of going for a smoke break at 2 p.m., we're going for a walk at 2 p.m. and we need something in our hands. So maybe we grab some carrots, right? We handle the carrots like we do the cigarettes. We want to chew those carrots because we need some of that mouth fixation. So think about how you can swap some healthier choices for maybe some things you're already doing. So plain yogurt with honey instead of flavored yogurt, right? Add fruit to your water instead of juice. Veggie noodles instead of pasta noodles, dark chocolate instead of milk chocolate, nuts instead of chips, veggies and hummus instead of crackers, eggs instead of cereal, right? There's things that you can do to make healthier food choices. Okay, I know I just flew through that, but I want to make sure that we get to talking about some of this essential nutrition. So some essential nutrition that I think is necessity is getting a multivitamin. A multivitamin is going to bridge the micronutrient gap and help fill in the gaps for where we're lacking in those minerals, those vitamins from the food sources we're eating. A good deal of evidence supports multivitamin use for prevention or outcomes for anemia, eye health, and bone disease. And there are even indications that cancer and heart disease prevention could be connected. So optimal nutrient bases are more likely to be found in supplements that are spread over several tablets or capsules. If you want to really talk about multivitamin, what I recommend, let's have a conversation in the office. But certainly I think a multivitamin should be a part of your supplement regimen here. Next, greens. Greens are severely lacking in our Western diet. And understanding that the nutrition or the foods that we're growing are already lacking. That's where I think if you can find a green drink that really tastes yummy, that's going to provide and fill in the gaps of really good nutrition, it's going to be the best thing you can do. Sometimes it's a scoop or 2 scoops. I like something called a dynamic greens, but they have them in all sorts of flavors. I think Amanda's got one from Purium that I really like. It's flavored appleberry, but it provides you with some really good nutritious powerhouses to support, just to support you getting the nutrition you need. Amanda, you want to see who's at the front? Thank you. Okay, so essential nutrition, omega-3s. So omega-3s are essential fatty acids. And just so you know, okay, essential fatty acids are important for nutrition of our brain and our nervous system. It's also hugely important for anti-inflammation. And if you talk to anybody who is big into functional medicine, they will say at the very foundation of chronic disease is inflammation in the body. So omega-3s are anti-inflammatory and support our cell membrane structure. And so what our ratio should be, actually should not exceed in terms of omega-3s versus omega-6s. Omega-6s are the processed foods, the simple carbohydrates, the pastas, the grains, that sort of thing. We shouldn't exceed 4 to 1, right? 4 omega-6s to 1 omega-3. The average American right now, the ratio that they're consuming is 25 to 1, which is pretty substantial. When you exceed 4 to 1, you're in the pain, you're in the anti-pain zone when you're at 4 to 1. As soon as you exceed that, likely to experience pain, but definitely experiencing inflammation. So omega-3s and or fish oils, because you don't necessarily have to have fish oils to get an omega-3. Flaxseed is another option, but omega-3s I find to be really important, and they have some really great benefits in terms of pain. Actually, some research has shown that they're better than pain meds following surgery. So omega-3s can be really wonderful. Again, questions on what we're taking in the office and what I have. Let's have a one-on-one conversation. Okay, I think I've got a couple minutes left here. Next. Well, I guess I went into some dosing for omega-3s. So healthy people who rarely eat fish, probably pretty good with 0.5 to 1 gram a day. If you're experiencing more chronic ailments, that's where you can increase your intake 2 to 4 grams a day. Acute therapy, you're talking about 3 to 30 grams. So again, you can get into more higher dosing of supplementation depending on what's going on with your body and your health. Vitamin D, I mean, if you've been in the conversation around, reducing your risk for COVID infectivity or risk factors related to the intensity of symptoms or even risk factor to death of COVID, vitamin D is a big conversation. It's important for skeletal health. It's important for immune health. It's important for brain health. So vitamin D is most definitely an essential supplement that I recommend to everybody, no question. Even if we live in sunny Colorado, right? The sun is our way of exposing ourselves to vitamin D absorption. But even when we are around, sunny Colorado, we're still deficient in vitamin D. So get outside, get your arms and legs, face some sun time, but also you need to be taking vitamin D supplementation. In my opinion, vitamin B blood tests are super easy to get. And I would challenge you, you can ask your primary care to get a vitamin D blood lab, do that. There's a great vitamin D calculator on Google. Just Google it, vitamin D calculator. You can put in what your current number is and what your goal number. And I would say your goal would be to be minimum 40. I don't remember what the units are to be blood wise, but you want to be at 40. And it'll tell you exactly what your supplementation should be for vitamin D wise. I've seen 1,000 IUs per 25 pounds in terms of vitamin D dosage. I weigh around 150 pounds. That would put me around 6,000 IUs. I'm upping it to 8,000 just because of the time of year and, just our level of exposure to everyday stuff. But again, we can be in conversation with that in the office. Lastly, probiotic. So I find this fascinating. We always think, especially in the conversation around viruses, bacteria, we think, oh, they are the bad guys. But guess what? Bacteria, they are 10 times more microbes in our body. So 10 times more bacteria in our bodies than human cells. And having a healthy microbiome or gut health and having healthy spectrum of good bacteria within our body is vital for our health. It is vital, right? I can't stress this enough when we're talking about being and living in an environment where we are so stressed to touch anything. We need to clean everything up because we're so scared of, virus exposure and infectivity. Guess what? The virus is not the problem. We need to create a more resilient host. The virus cannot take over a body that is healthy, okay? That's where, yes, there are those exceptions. There are those exceptions, but if a virus is taking over a body, that there's something else going on. So my challenge to you is how can you create a more resilient host, right? Somebody who is experiencing chronic disease and have those, obesity and those risk factors of poor physical health and inactivity, not eating good nutritious foods, that is prime tissue for viruses to take over or bacteria to take over, right? But these are vital. It is vital to be exposed to bacteria and viruses and fungi and parasites to create a healthy immune system, right? It just becomes a problem when we are not healthy ourselves. So probiotics are really important to create and support healthy microbiome. Microbiome is connected to, the health of an immune system, health of a brain, and overall body. So I find probiotics are really important. I wouldn't be taking a probiotic, less than 20 billion in terms of the amount of probiotic in there, and then having a nice wide spectrum of different probiotics. And you can get into some pretty interesting detailing as far as probiotics that target specific diseases. So again, those are conversations we can have in the office. And you can get that in foods, right? Fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, apple cider vinegar, even goats or coconut milk, kefir, yogurts. Those have great probiotic content. But again, some of those things like a yogurt, you're not necessarily going to get the bang for your buck that you need. So if you're on an antibiotic, you say, oh, I'm taking yogurt. A lot of times there's a lot of sugar in those yogurts, so not necessarily your best option. You need a high quality supplement. And really that's what I want to end with for you is you need a high quality supplement. A lot of times when you go to a Walgreens, you go to a Target, you know, you get what you pay for. And that's really the truth when it comes to supplementation. So, I mean, what I want to end with today is really addressing the foods that you're eating and, you know, closing the gaps nutritionally with some quality supplementation can really have a major impact in terms of your health. A lot of these aren't new. A lot of things that I'm talking about today, people know already. But why I do this, somebody said today, yeah, I actually knew a lot of the things you shared in the workshop, but it holds me accountable. I hear the information. When I hear it consistently over and over and over, I start making different choices. And that's my goal for you. I want you to be healthier. You know, tomorrow, 10 days from now, next year, 10 years, I want you to be a healthier, more informed individual. And that's why I do what I do. And people who get chiropractic care tend to be healthier because they're open to lifestyle choices and just an alternative way of health. And frankly, that is what is needed because what the average person is experiencing in terms of health, vitality, and life is not so great. So my challenge to you is, who do you know that needs to know what you know about chiropractic and being more informed and wants to experience life in a better way? Because those people need hope. And I am here to support you. I love and appreciate you. I'm so grateful that you are choosing me to be your partner in health and choosing to be healthier because it's an investment in every way. So I will see you next week for our next workshop talking about prescribed epidemic. It will be great. So stay tuned for that and I will talk to you soon. Take care.